and I was stuck there. And I looked at my halyards and I was like, how the hell am I going to get down now? Because I was completely tangled up in the whole rig.
On the Wind is presented by my own Harbor Burn Cannon Company. Brought to you by 4 of the founders of 59 North Sailing. Harbor Burn was born by an idea of a group of my friends and I who wanted to add some fun and figured if you own a boat, you need to have a cannon. Our origin goes back almost 20 years when one of our founders and friends, Tom Harrington, bought his first black powder signal cannon to mount on the bow of his Erickson 35 Jubilee. There it sat for many thousands of miles aboard the boat, celebrating sunsets and making people smile up and down the East Coast from Maine to the Bahamas. To make a long story short, Jubilee sank at the dock in Florida during Hurricane Matthew in 2016. Tom was able to salvage the cannon, where it now resides on the bow of their Erickson 38 Compass, and we decided to create a replica of Tom's original black powder cannon. So today, you can buy the Harrington Mark I at harborburn.com. We've got one on Falcon. August has one for Eastbjorn, and Emma, co-host of the podcast, has one for her boat, Seabird, up in Maine, and they are fantastic fun. So if you own a boat, you need a cannon. If you need a cannon, go to harborburn.com to pick up yours there. They are hand-stamped and custom-finished at Lee and Tom's Garage in Frederick, Maryland, and in Virginia, respectively, and shipped out to you with everything you need except for the black powder to fire off your cannon on your boat. Head on over to harborburn.com and see what all the fuss is about. On the Wind is supported by Forbes Horton Yachts. Forbes, one of the longest sponsors of the show, is back again. Huge thanks to them for sponsoring the show. If you need to buy a boat or you need to sell your boat, look no further than Forbes and his wife Jamie, who run a wonderful brokerage out of Annapolis, Maryland. If you're looking at a boat under another broker, Forbes can act as your buyer's broker, and I highly recommend doing that because there is no bias involved. Forbes helped us buy Eastbjorn. Forbes has been involved in all the boats I've bought or sold over the years, whether indirectly or directly as the listing or selling broker. And he's just a fun guy. He's also a sailor himself. They sailed to the Caribbean. Forbes has been on the podcast to tell this story. In fact, Forbes and Jamie sailed to the Caribbean on a refit Tartan 34 Classic and knows what it's like to be a sailor and to do the real thing. Forbes continues to be a boater, has kids growing up on the Chesapeake, and you can't find a more honest person. The boat broker scene is not necessarily known for its honesty. Forbes is one of the good guys and an honest broker. If you want to see what he's listing currently or get in touch with him, go to ForbesYachts.com. That's FORBES, ForbesYachts.com. We're hopefully going to see Forbes in Annapolis at our seminar coming up, our workshop on offshore sailing in April this year. So if you want to meet him there in person, go to 59-north.com/events and come join us for our Offshore Essentials workshop in Annapolis, and Forbes will be there. Again, go to Forbes Yachts, FORBES, ForbesYachts.com. Ahoy, shipmates. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Andy. I am on the show this week, one of my episodes. I interviewed Alex in the Caribbean. I said Barbados in the intro, but I can't remember if it was there or Antigua. We sailed a trip together in the Caribbean. I've sailed a bunch with Alex, and he's one of our full-time staff, both a skipper and a mate for us, with a really cool sailing background. I want to emphasize that we talked about how Alex got into Clipper. Alex was a skipper, is a skipper at Clipper, and was a mate, sailed around the world with them, but he sailed around the world with them as a paying crew. And we talked about how that sort of influenced his life. He was a teenager and got inspired to do Clipper, and he's like, I want to do that. He worked his butt off, saved all his money, and at 19 actually did it. And I hope that inspires other young people, or anybody for that matter, to like, hey, there's ways to actually go and do this. You know, Alex looked at it like his college education. He spent a lot less than you would going to college, and he got an amazing education for it, and is now working as a professional sailor with us and Clipper and, world-class organizations. So really cool thing. We come back, we'll talk about that. I just wanted to make a note of that up front to listen for that, especially if you're an aspiring sailor and looking for a way to break into the business. Couple things at 59 North. We are finally launching officially the 2026 Falcon calendar in the Pacific. We've organized the dates. Everything is up. It's going to be online by the time you hear this, and it is open for booking. We did some pre-booking for people on our mailing list and on the quarterdeck and had an amazing response. Nearly 50% of the available spaces were already taken before we even put it on the website. So really excited for that. If you still want to sail with us, there is plenty of room. But go check out the new calendar on the website. You can also go to 59-north.com/bunks to see what we have available still for this year and next year on both boats. And as I mentioned last week, we're doing this joint workshop in Annapolis in the fall. We have our fall boat show stuff now on the website. We're doing that with Brady and Blue from Cruisers Academy. So that's at 59-north.com/boat show. All right, without further ado, here comes my conversation with Alex Laline, and it starts with a banger of a story from the Clipper race. So enjoy this one, and I'll talk to you next time. And until then, hold fast. You're listening to On the Wind, my podcast about offshore sailing. I'm your host, Andy Schell. Alex Laline is a lifelong sailor and one of our full-time staff at 59 North. Growing up in a multinational family, he sailed dinghies as a kid in the UK, Spain, and Indonesia, then got inspired to sail around the world when he saw an ad for Clipper. As a teenager, he saved all his money and joined Clipper as a paying crew member at 19, completing a circumnavigation and later going on to work as a mate and now skipper for them as well, under the guidance of Clipper founder Sir Robin Knox-Johnston. I talked to Alex about his sailing career on board FALKEN in Barbados. All right, I want to jump right into this. Normally, I would ask some different questions, but you've got so many crazy stories. I want to hear the up the rig story. Well, let's straight into it, and then we'll dive into some of your background and how you got there in the first place. You were telling my dad and I this story the other night. So let's just start there. What happened when you went aloft on Clipper?
All right, so we were on leg 2 of the 15-16 race, Southern Ocean, and it was sunrise. We had the spinnaker up, and wind was building, waves were building, and we...
You were how old?
I was at this point 19.
And you were a paying customer, right?
I was a paying customer, paying crew.
We'll come back to that, but that's an important detail, I think.
Yes. Anyway, I had been steering for quite a while during the night, and I was quite tired but young, and I was super happy with everything. And anyway, we were planning on putting the spinnaker down when we were on watch change, and there was a big bang at the top of the mast. And we were like, ooh. So we went straight onto positions to drop and start easing the halyard, and nothing happened. It was like, oh, man. So the block at the top of the mast, basically where the spinnaker halyard runs through, had peeled open, and the halyard was jammed between the sheave and the block itself. So there was only one solution, which is sending somebody up the rig.
Did you just see that with the binoculars? Somebody looked up and saw?
Yes.
And that was the bang?
Yeah, that was the bang. That was the block basically peeling open.
Jeez.
So yeah, I put my hand up when we were like, we had to put somebody up the rig. I was like, I'll do it. And I mean, it was many mistakes were made, but anyway, I ended up going up the rig. Long story short, going all the way up, managing to spike the halyard. Spinnaker came down.
So wait, what does spike the halyard mean?
So I basically, with a spike in my hand, put the spike through the shackle to open the shackle
to let the sail basically just fall out of the sky, right?
Exactly.
Did it go in the water?
Oh yeah, the whole thing. But that was the crew's problem. I had my own problems at the top of the mast. So once that was done, I tried to unjam the halyard for quite a while, way too long, I would say, and I started getting really tired. And I started figuring out how tired I was because I couldn't close my hands anymore. And
was it cold? You said Southern Ocean. Was it cold?
Oh yeah, I had like 7 or 8 layers on me. 7 or 8 layers, a helmet, but no gloves, which is Anyway, I then started panicking a bit because I started losing strength in my hands. So I asked the on-deck team to bring me down. And on the way down, now we didn't have a spinnaker, so we only had the mainsail at this point. So the boat started rocking a lot more because we were depowered.
How big was the sea state?
It must have been like 4 or 5 meter swells at this point.
So that's like 5 meters, 12 to 15 feet, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's huge.
Yes, and it was building. And on my way down, I was by this point on the third spreaders, just between the third and second spreaders.
Sorry, this is on the Clipper 70s, right?
This is on the Clipper 70.
Was this the first race that they had the 70s?
It was the second.
Second race with the 70s. Okay, all right.
Yeah, second race with the 70s.
So that's a tall mast.
Yeah, I mean, the mast is 31 meters, I think.
So that's almost 100 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tall mast. Yeah, everyone looked like little ants from up there. So anyway, I was between the third and second spreader when basically a wave hit the side of the boat pretty heavily, and I was clipped onto the shrouds. So at the very end of the spreaders, with my long tether, which has quite a lot of swing into it. So once the wave hit the side of the boat, I couldn't hold on anymore because I couldn't close my hands because I was so tired, and I started swinging all around the rig. And I could not do anything about it. I was like a little pendulum, just going in and out between the shrouds, between the spreaders, around the mast. It was interesting to see from down on deck, I'm sure. But yeah, I swung for like good half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour, until they started grinding me up so I could hold on to the third spreaders, because I was just in between the two of them.
Yeah.
And when they did that, I managed to hold on to the third spreaders, and I was stuck there. And I looked at my halyards and I was like, how the hell am I going to get down now? Because I was completely tangled up in the whole rig.
Were you on like two halyards? Did you have like safety halyard on as well? And you're in like a climbing harness. So you did sort of, safety harness, two halyards, helmet.
Yeah, I had everything
all the right
on.
Things.
Yeah, but I was clipped on the wrong place.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Yeah,
just keep going. This story gets like crazier.
So yeah, I was up there, and then I when I looked at all my halyards, my first instinct was like, I need to untangle myself. So I tried to get on the edge of the spreaders again and started losing grip once again. So I was like, no, I'm just not gonna move. Like, I'm not moving. And my brain went through 3 periods here. So first period was, I'm gonna die. Like, this is it. I'm gonna die in the Southern Ocean, which sounds pretty cool, to be honest. At least it's not being run over by a bus in London.
Okay, all right.
But I was at 19.
Yeah.
So my first thought is, I'm gonna die, and then it was replaced by my second thought of being like, I think I can actually hold on to the mast until we reach South Africa, which was 2 weeks away.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, they can send me water or food or whatever, and I can hold on until the firefighters come and rescue me.
Oh,
I can do this.
Oh my God, that actually went through your mind.
Yeah, it did. I was like, I can hold on. I definitely can. And that second thought was replaced by a third thought, which was, I think, when I went into shock, which my brain completely left my body, and started thinking about songs that I had been listening to in Rio. I was trying to remember the name of a movie that I couldn't remember the name, and people were trying to communicate with me, and I was just not responding.
How many days into the passage was this?
This was, I can't really remember, but I'm pretty sure it was like on less than a week into the passage.
Okay, so you're still like struggling with sleep deprivation, as you would, I guess, the whole passage.
Yeah.
But like, it's just that on top of this shock and everything.
Yeah, we were kind of like right in the middle between Rio and South Africa.
Wow. Okay. So all right. So now you're hanging on and you're thinking, 2 weeks of this, I'll make it. The firefighters can get me. What happened? How did you get down?
So
I mean, you clearly didn't wait 2 weeks.
No, I didn't. I waited 3 hours, give or take.
3 hours?
3 hours, give or take the whole thing. And 3 to 4 hours. I can't remember very well, but it's between 3 and 4 hours. And eventually we stopped racing. So an email was sent that our boat was going to stop racing and all of that. And we changed course to try and make it smoother. And the decision, there was a problem, and it was we were running out of halyards at this point.
Because you had a spinnaker halyard jammed at the top.
Yeah.
You're on 2 of them.
Yeah, and I had wrapped myself around so many of them that they became unusable.
Okay.
Because my halyards were wrapped around the halyards.
How many halyards would you normally have? 2 spin halyards?
2 spin halyards.
2 jibs?
2 jibs and 2 staysails. That's at the front of the mast.
But the staysail's lower down.
Yeah, it's exactly.
And then
the staysail didn't
2
reach.
mains?
1 main, 1 topping lift.
Okay, so spare, it could be used as
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what.
So that's like what? So if at the masthead, that's what, 6 halyards at the masthead plus 7, 8 on the staysail.
Correct.
And you were at the height of the staysail, so those could have been an option.
No, the staysail was. I think the third spreader was higher than the staysail.
So you're still higher than the staysail.
I'm still higher than the staysail.
Okay. All right.
So that wasn't an option.
So do you know, like, what was happening down on deck as you're sitting up there holding on literally for your life?
Well, I had this chat with some fellow crewmates, and they were all like, I mean, they were devastated because they could not do absolutely anything at one point. Like some people were crying, some people were like, it was a bit of not panic, but like, what do we do? Like, how are we gonna get him down? And the skipper at that point, she offered to come up the rig to basically untangle me. But another crew member, a Canadian called Ryan, he offered to come up and untangle me, basically. So the decision was made to drop the main halyard. So drop the mainsail in order to use the main halyard, which would also allow him to clip around the whole mast and just go up. So once he reached me, he could just clip me around the mast, so I wouldn't swing one bit.
Yeah.
Now, when that happened, so they started lowering the mainsail. That made my life harder in a way, because that boat moves so much.
Well, there's no stabilizing
Exactly.
force from the wind. Now you've no sail up now.
No sail up.
That's like the worst.
Yeah, we were bare poles at this point. But yeah, I remember perfectly then. So Ryan came up and he just looked me in the face. I remember perfectly looking him in the eyes, and he just asked me, "Are you all right, buddy?" And I just almost burst into tears, like, "Just get me down, please." So yeah, he managed to untangle my halyards and then clip myself into him and then around the mast. And there's a video somewhere that a friend of ours has that is both of us coming down through the mast.
Wow.
But that was a hell of a story.
I mean, you skipped over the state of your hands during all this.
Oh God, yeah. So I was grabbing onto the onto the spreaders, and I saw all this like blood, and I was like, "Where's this blood coming from?" Because I could not feel one bit of my body. Like, my body was all numb, and I was wearing a helmet, so I was pretty sure it wasn't coming from my head. But I didn't know if it was coming from my face. And then I touched my face to try and see if it was my face, and then I looked at my hand and realized I was like, "Oh my God!" And all the skin of my hands was basically gone from trying to hold on to the shrouds and being pulled with the force. So
Jesus.
yeah, it was all the spreaders full of my hand blood, which it was quite the horror movie scene.
So how do you how do you continue sailing in the Southern Ocean with no skin on the palm of your hands?
I mean,
how did you treat that?
We just bandaged them. It wasn't as bad. It was more superficial than anything. It didn't go into like burn degree or anything.
Yeah,
it was just superficial hand burn, basically.
How long did it take to come back to normal, though?
It was like one or two legs, a couple of legs.
Jesus. So what do you remember what it felt like to come down?
I remember being in a lot of pain, and my pain was mainly because my body had been so stiff for 3 hours.
You were so tense.
I could not, and I remember Ryan telling me, because I wouldn't let go of the mast on every spreader. Like, my legs and my arms would just be literally clenched against the mast, and he would ask me, like, "You need to let go in order to go past the spreader," and I wanted to, but I just couldn't. Like, my body was all so stiff. So I remember that, and my leg really, really hurting from like the pressure I was applying to the mast. They call me Koala for a bit.
Koala. Love the great way to make light of a serious situation. That's
yes.
Pretty good. How did you not like just turn into a wrecking ball and like break every bone in your body? How did that not happen?
Well, I'm pretty sure we all agree.
Did you break anything?
Did nothing.
Just the hands?
Just the hands, which recovered pretty quick for what it was.
Jesus.
And I believe it was all the layers that I was wearing. Because I was wearing like, this is quite another funny story, but I had not much money. I didn't have much money left when I was in the race. So all my clothes were like, they were not expensive clothes. And I realized this now after years of experience in the industry. Is like, oh my God, like I wish I had like the brain to be like, okay, I need to invest a bit more for the clothing, because I was wearing like 8 or 9 layers, but they were all cotton.
Yeah.
So like they used to be soaking wet the whole time and everything. But at the same time, I had 8 layers of like bouncing against the mast. So that definitely helped. Yeah.
Jeez. Cool. Didn't you say, because something similar happened in an earlier leg where a guy was up there in just shorts and t-shirts and did break a lot of bones?
Yes. And it's a guy that I did my training with. And remember him texting me after being like, "I know exactly how you feel and I hope you're okay." But he broke, I mean, so many ribs, bones, everything. He was around the world that I ended up only doing 3 legs because he was out for the most of the race.
So again, you came down, like, what happens now? Did you guys debrief? What did they do with you? Did they continue racing? What did the skipper say? Like, I mean, how do you move on from that? So how do you personally move on from that?
Well, it affected me mentally it affected me a lot. I became quite. I mean, I used to be like a young guy, like up in the bow, like up in the bowsprit, whatever. Like I loved it. And after that, I didn't leave the cockpit for the rest of the leg. That's for sure. But I was scared. It really put my confidence down on a point that I was scared of what was happening on board, because I realized it's like I could really hurt myself here if I'm not careful. But right after I came down, I mean, this is all the media stuff as well, but they were like, you need to give a statement ASAP. But that's the last thing I wanted to do. I was just like, I'm still in shock. So the skipper said, like, look, just go to bed and rest as much as you can. So we did exactly that. I went to bed, and then after I woke up, I wanted to send my family a message first. But anyway, then that's the long story. It's not that relevant. But went to bed. I skipped one day of watches. And then the next day I stayed down below just cooking and everything, and then slowly made my way back up onto the watch system. Because that was the best thing to do, is like do as normal, like go. The idea was get back on the watch system ASAP, so that I don't know.
Was that your idea, the skipper's idea?
That was the skipper's idea.
Yeah.
I wanted to stay in my bunk, to be honest.
The rest of the trip.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, did you ever think about just quitting? Because you had signed up for the whole round the world.
Yes. I didn't at that point. But I was really scared. But I didn't at that point. I didn't think about dropping out.
By the time you got to, where was it, South Africa?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody must have heard about this, right? So how were other boats and crew and stuff treating you when you got there?
Well, it was more from the clip side of things. They were very nice to me, like the whole office, and they were really always asking how I was and all of that. Other crews and skippers, they didn't really know. So nobody knew until they got to land and saw the statement.
Yeah.
But it was all quite normal. All quite normal. It's very strange.
Did you ever give a statement?
Just a written one to my family. But me personally, to the website, no, I didn't.
What was it like made public? I mean, that's kind of the thing with like a, Clipper being like a media organization as well. Like they've got to say, like that stuff's going to come out, and they've got to say something about it.
Yeah, it was made public, it was a bit of a confusing statement because it kind of sounded like I've fallen overboard.
Okay.
Which then they changed again.
That happened a different time.
Yes. No, yeah.
On the bowsprit, right?
Yes, that was another one.
We'll come back to that. I want to come back. The details of this are, maybe we can touch on some of the debrief stuff. I'm interested from a technical standpoint, but going back now, you were 19 years old. You did the Clipper. How did you get into sailing in the first place? Like, what led you to that? And also, you paid, what, $60,000 or something?
It was 45 at that point.
So
£45,000. So, yeah.
How does a 19-year-old do that? And how did you, what led you to that in the first place? Did you grow up sailing? Where did this all start?
So, yeah, I mean, my sailing goes back to when I was 4 years old. So my parents were both sailors and loved being in the sea and everything. And they had a little... my first experience was as a 4-year-old. They chartered a 31-footer, and we just did part of the Spanish coast.
And you grew up in you grew up in Spain,
in Barcelona.
Your parents are not.
My dad is from Belgium, and my mom is from Barcelona.
Okay.
So yeah, we did that, and I mean, I was loving it. But I kind of did like the opposite. So I started on bigger boats. So I did
That's how I did too. Same.
Yeah. So I did that first, and then they bought a 32-footer that was pure a racing machine. And so I used to race. It used to be the three of us racing in the Sunday club races.
Cool.
It was the best way to like shout to your parents and them shout at you and get all the stress out. And it was then that I started looking at lasers and all those other boats, and I got really interested. So I then jumped into lasers and did that for quite a few years. So I was kind of always like every weekend we would go and sail.
So it sounds to me, maybe this is a bad assumption, but like you were just sort of immersed in it, not necessarily by choice initially. It was just what your family did.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, both my sister and I had the choice, and my sister hated it and I loved it. It's kind of the two opposites. So I carried on, and every time there was a chance to sail, I would go with them. Yeah, pretty much.
And were your parents competitive?
Oh yeah, they were very competitive. Like even to the point with a 32-footer, if there was a laser sailing next to them, they would raise a laser. It's like, come on, guys. So yeah, they only understood racing. The cruising kind of lifestyle didn't appeal to them.
So talk a bit about, because I have a feeling like, okay, so we'll come back to you being 19 and wanting to do this Clipper thing, which is like the opposite of going to school and being normal. But I get the impression that your parents are also not normal. Like, what? Talk a little bit about your parents and how you guys moved around and what they did for a living. That I think sort of shed some light on makes it more clear why you did what you do.
Yeah. So I mean, when I was born, so in '96, they started their own business, which was a chocolate business in Spain. Because my father, being from Belgium, he was like, oh my God, I can't believe there's no like proper handmade chocolate in Spain, not a single one. So then they rented a garage with barely any pennies. They started in the garage making their own chocolate, and it took off big time. So they ended up, I think, if my numbers are right, I think it was about 58 shops around Spain.
Wow.
And about 25 in Asia.
Wow.
So
why Asia? Why Spain and Asia of all places?
The Asians love chocolate.
Huh.
It's like
how did your dad know that? Like, why did they decide? Okay, we're going to Asia.
So we went for holidays to Bali through a friend of ours, and my parents fell in love with Bali. And always you had to do stopover in Singapore. And in Singapore, they realized like the chocolate culture was quite big, and how Asians love chocolate. And same with China. So they had lots of offers from Chinese.
So that was just an accident because you went there on vacation.
Pretty much.
Wow. Okay. All right.
So yeah, and I mean it also brings. So they fell in love with Bali as well. So they decided to build a house in Bali. And meanwhile, in Barcelona, they had all the shops and everything, which was going great until the 2008 crisis, which it all basically went bust. And everything in Spain that they owned was under the company's name. So
how old were you
at this point? I was 14.
And your sister older or younger?
Older. She was 18.
Okay.
So she was living in Madrid, not with us anymore.
Okay.
So yeah, 14, company went bust. And the only thing that the company didn't own was the house in Bali. So there was a decision made of...
So the company lost everything.
Everything.
Including where you lived.
Yes.
Wow.
But that, yeah, it was through investors. So investors came and basically pushed them out, and it all ended up on a big court case that they lost, and we had to leave.
Wow.
Yeah. So the only thing that the company didn't know was Bali, and that's where I ended up when I was 14.
So the whole family just moved to Bali?
Yes, except my sister. My sister kind of moved for 6 months, but then was like, nah, not for me.
How did that affect you?
I loved it. I loved Bali since I was a kid, and I always felt more identified in Bali than in Spain.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, more like I think it's the lifestyle and like how people were nice to each other, and how I don't know. I really always loved the people there, and yes, it's like the whole. They say Bali has an energy, like they call it the island of the gods. And you either feel it or don't feel it, and I definitely felt it, and I felt like at home there for many years. So,
because I from a distance, it would have been like, man, this is pretty traumatic. Your family just lost everything. You're like prime teenager, like all your friends and stuff, and now you're just moving to literally the other side of the world. Like that could have been pretty gnarly. Yeah, but I remember the conversation so I had two options when this whole thing was going on, because I was playing tennis in quite a professional way. And I had 2 scholarships offered to me in Chicago or Florida, and it was either that or Bali. And I remember I had a conversation with my mom, and she was like, you can either go to, because I was going to be under 18 at this point, so I had to go with a family. And she was like, look, you can either like go to church every Sunday with like your hair on the side, like all nice, like with your polo neck and everything, or you can go to Bali, have long hair, and surf every day. It's up to you. So yeah, I didn't think about it for too long, and ended up in Bali. I forgot about the tennis thing. How did that start? And like, because you that was a turning point. You just mentioned it. How did you start with tennis, and where did that come from?
Well, again, like I started tennis as a young kid, summer camp, the typical, and it turned out I was pretty good as a kid, and got offered a scholarship to be in a high performance center, and I did that during 3 years
in Spain,
next to my house, and played tennis at the highest level that there is for youngsters, and hated every second of it.
What did you hate about it?
I just didn't like the competition so much, which is funny because I'm quite a competitive person, but it never appealed to me. Like for me, tennis was a fun sport that it became non-fun as soon as I started that, and I it became from really enjoying it, playing with friends, to being too serious for. I mean, I was 10 years old when I did all of this. It's like, yeah, way too young.
Did your parents? I mean, you hear the classic Andre Agassi story. Like he followed it and continued hating it, and yet succeeded. And a lot of it, I think, that was down to his parents pressuring him and stuff. Where did you feel that, or was it your choice?
No, I don't think they ever pressured me. Like, no, never. They've always been very open and I'm super lucky on that. I think that's the reason I'm here right now. It's like they've always supported me and my sister of whatever you guys want to do, we'll be behind you. I mean, obviously, if you do something, do it well. So on the tennis side, like once I was in it, it was like, do it well then. Like, don't just do it halfway through. But yeah, it all lined up that when I lost my scholarship at the same time that this whole thing happened. So it kind of, the years fell perfectly on like, okay, we're going, like we need to go. And that's why also with friends and everything, it didn't affect me that much because I didn't have that many friends because I was so involved in that world.
Your whole life was tennis.
Yeah. Tennis during the week, sailing during the weekend.
So you continued sailing during the tennis years as well?
Yeah, doing lasers.
All right. Were you competing in that as well?
Yeah, I did the Spanish championships and everything.
Really?
Yeah. It was quite fun.
Wow.
But you see, I enjoy lasers. Even if most of the times I came last, like last of the last, but I still enjoyed it so much. And that was the difference. That was for fun. The other one was to perform and expectations and everything.
Interesting. So all right. So your dad's Belgian, your mom's Spanish. You're born in Spain.
Yeah.
Lived in Bali as a teenager. Now you live in England. What do you feel like? How do you identify? What do you most identify?
Gosh, like that is, I don't. I am probably the most lost when it comes to, every time I see the word citizenship, I'm like, I don't know what to put in there. Because I think I'm more British now than anything, but also feel, I know, tell me about it. But also every time Indonesia or Bali comes into conversation, I feel like they're talking about my home, but then I go to Barcelona to visit all my family and it feels like home. But then I go home, which is Brighton. So it's all very confusing, but I love it. I love not to be like, I'm just from here. I love to be like, I'm from different places.
Yeah.
And every place has made me the person I am today.
What languages do you speak?
So English, Catalan, Spanish. I used to be able to speak Bahasa Indonesian, but I would struggle with that now a bit more.
How long did you spend in Indonesia?
4 years.
Sorry, are there more languages?
In Indonesia?
No. You said...
sorry, yes.
Listed 4 now.
And French. French is...
Oui, monsieur.
Oui. It's because my grandparents speak French, and my dad obviously speaks French and Flemish.
I forget, French because of Belgium.
Yeah. So since a kid, like, I've grown up listening to French. I wouldn't say I speak it very well, but I understand it much, much better than I speak it.
So, like, when we were down in the Saints the other day, when you did customs and stuff, were you speaking French?
I was trying.
You were trying?
Yeah, but sometimes some people are not very forgiving when you're trying.
So they just start speaking English because they're like, okay, this is enough.
Yeah, but the funny thing, last time I went to Barcelona, I started speaking Catalan, my mother language, and they replied to me in English. I was like, what's wrong? And they're like, oh, you are actually Catalan, like, because of my accents changing so much that they just thought I was an English trying to speak Catalan. I was like, I'm actually from here.
Wow. Well, what happens to me sometimes in Sweden is I speak Swedish pretty well, but I have a better accent than it sounds like. Like, I have an American accent, but like my pronunciation of Swedish is pretty good.
Yeah.
Better than my actual like vocabulary. So people will think I speak Swedish better than I do.
Yeah.
And then I sometimes get lost in these different conversations because, like, no, listen, I'm not as good as it sounds like. But so wait, what's the difference between? This is very ignorant, I think, but what's the difference between Catalan and Spanish?
Oh, you sure you want to go down that route?
I do, yeah.
It's just so Catalan is actually considered a language, and it derives more from the French than the Spanish. That's about it. It's just another language inside Spain, but that's the beauty of Spain as well.
If you speak only Spanish, would you understand Catalan? And vice versa?
You would understand some sides of it, but if we spoke it quickly, or like people from the countryside in Catalonia, there would be no chance. Like, even I struggle with people on the countryside.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And there's a whole like Catalan separatist thing, isn't there?
There is.
Which I gather you don't subscribe to.
No, I don't subscribe to. I mean, I understand it, but I'm also like, with my point of view in the world, like, the less borders there are, the better. It would be against my principles, but I understand it, and yeah.
So you said your parents were always very supportive of both you and your sister. Did that translate when you're like, hey, I want to do this Clipper thing and it's going to cost $45,000?
Oh, big time. So
how did you even get that in your head? How did you get it in your head, and how did you actually think it was going to happen as a teenager?
So it was all at the same time that we were moving to Bali. So it was all the same year. So we were still in Barcelona when I found out about the Clipper race, and I was like, oh my God, this sounds so cool. Like, not only sailing around the world, but racing with other boats. It's like it hit every single tick that I wanted to tick. So yeah, I applied for them to send me all the paperwork and all the information. And I remember my dad opened the mail and he was like, what the hell is this? And I was like, oh, that's for me. Take it over. And he was so fascinated by the idea. He was really into it.
Oh,
and he was
wow.
like,
Okay.
This is cool. This is cool. So anyway, he stopped there for that year because it's when we moved to Bali and all of that. And then I started school in Bali and I was out of place. It's like, it doesn't even cover it. It felt like I was in Bali, which I loved, but I was in Australia inside the school because it was an Australian school.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't feel right. I was like, I don't want to be here. And I really struggled to focus on my studies and everything. So I took back the Clipper thing and I was like, I really want to do this. Like 100%. I don't see myself like pursuing a career in university. I really don't. So what can I do? And I was like, this would be amazing to have the opportunity to do this. So I talked to my parents about it and they were like, yeah, but how are you going to pay for it? So yeah, a plan was made. I was going to start saving as much as I could. And I did that through tennis lessons, through working in a Spanish bar.
You were giving tennis lessons?
Yeah, in Bali. And bits and bobs and like saving every penny I could through everything. I worked for my parents' shop that they opened in Bali. Everything that I could, I would save it. And so fast forward 4 years later, basically I had saved quite a lot of money, but I still didn't have enough. And I was turning 18 and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Like,
does Clipper do you have to be 18 to join Clipper?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, okay.
But also I was like, all my friends are going to uni now. What am I going to do? Should I go to uni? Maybe I should go to uni. And this thing is just a whole bunch of fantasies. And it's at this point where my parents both said, you're going to do this. You need to do this. So we're going to put the last bit for you and consider it your university fee.
Yeah.
It goes into this. And then that's when I left for the UK. It was 3 months before the start of the race.
Did you go into Clipper with the idea that this was like a pathway to doing this professionally, or had you thought that far ahead? Was this just like, I want to do this, period?
It was more at first it was a dream that I was like, I want to do it. And I was so lost on what to do and what not to do that I was like, I'm going to do this. And then during the races when I found out that, shoot, I can actually make a career out of this. Like,
because the skippers, you're like, okay, learning more about that.
Yeah. And I find out during that period that there was a gap in the industry of people working between 60 and 80 foot boats. Because it was either super yachts or like the typical RYA 40 footer. So it was
sailing schools or whatever. Yeah.
And I was like, after I finish this, I'm going to have 50,000 miles on a 70 foot boat. Like that's surely it's going to help me somehow. And yeah.
I'm surprised and impressed that like you said 4 years had passed since you first got that packet in the mail.
Yeah.
And when you actually turned 18. For a teenager to like maintain that sort of focus on a goal, like that seems like an awfully long time.
I'm, as my mom calls me, when I put something in my head, I'm a Taurus. When I put something in my head, oh my God, like good luck trying to get it out. Because I've always been like that. And I was passionate and I was really, really, I was in love with the ocean. I was surfing every single day and thinking about sailing. And yeah, I just wanted to be out there. So it was never really a thing that I didn't want to do. So it stayed in my head forever.
What did it feel like when you actually were like, it became reality and you got on the plane and you're going to England?
Well, my first reality check was I did my training in Australia.
Okay.
So I did my first 2 training levels in Australia and that's when reality hit. And again, like I was even more sure about it after I spent a week and 2 weeks on the boat. It was like, hell yeah, this is going to be amazing. And yeah, on the way to the UK, it was super cool. Like I remember every feeling and it was so cool. Like the thought of like, we're going to be sailing around the world. It's freaking crazy. It's like, this is insane, man.
Did you ever second guess yourself? I mean, was there ever moments where you're like, why have I done this? What have I done?
So many.
Besides when you were stuck at the top of the mast.
So many. I struggled through a couple of times. Halfway through the race, I really struggled as well. In China, I had a really bad food poisoning.
Food poisoning?
Yes, really, really bad. Oof. A day before the race started.
Oh, no.
And it was for leg 6, which is like the big ocean, North Pacific crossing, which is always when like the horror stories are. And
yeah.
I was so not ready to be on that boat. So I struggled on that one. Plus, I was only like 3 hours flight from Bali. I was like, I could literally be home in 3 hours. And it was my sister. I remember I called my parents the day of the start of the race. I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I called my parents for them to be like, you know, when you call someone for them to be like, just come home and just rejoin on the next leg after. And they didn't pick up the phone. I was like, I need to talk to someone. So I called my sister, and we don't normally call. So she just picked up the phone, and we had a long conversation. And she had a few glasses of wine. And all she said was like, just get on that boat or you'll regret it for the rest of your life. And I did just that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you recover from the food poisoning?
Yeah, but it took me a while. It took me like 4 or 5 days on the boat.
Oh my God, I can't imagine being at sea, not just normally, but even racing and having to deal with that. It's bad enough when you're feeling great.
Yes, that wasn't a good start, and then the whole leg wasn't a good one for me. But
how did the like you said during it hit you that okay you could do this professionally? Then how did you focus on that, and how did you like manage to get through the rest of the race while also thinking about how you could make this a career?
So during the boat, I made a really good friends with Han, who is a South Korean, amazing person, really straightforward, will always achieve. Will always, like, again, if he puts something in his head, he'll go for it. So we both made plans. As soon as we got back to land, we'll get our certifications, our yacht masters, and take it from there. And he was like a big brother to me, and we did exactly that. As soon as we got to land, he was like, all right. We didn't even have time to recover, and he was like, all right, plans, when are we gonna do this? And I was like, all right, relax. And he's like, if you don't do it now, you're gonna delay it for so long. So we did it. I mean, we finished the race in August, and in September and October we were already doing our yacht masters. We did like the fast track, like 18 months. Was it 18? 8 months. Oh, I can't remember. 18 weeks, not months.
18 weeks. Yeah.
And it was great. So he helped me in that a lot. And he was doing my yacht masters. That the examiner was like, you should become an instructor, which had never occurred to me. So I took that advice and also did my instructor tickets, and from there it was all different experiences and different companies.
What was your first job?
Deliveries.
Yeah,
deliveries. Yeah, and
Do you remember the first one that you were getting? The first time you got paid to sail?
The first time I got paid was a delivery of a ketch from Valencia to Cowes, and oh my God, I got paid pennies. It was actually ridiculous, but yes, it was something. I think I got paid it was £30 a day or something.
Were you
like that.
just crew, or were you the skipper?
Just crew. It was 4 of us, just crew. So skipper, first mate, and 2 crew deckhands.
Yeah.
And that was the first time. It was a handmade catch. It was so sketchy, the whole thing. Oh my God. The guy was like, the autopilot doesn't work in one course. We're like, okay, what course is it? He's like, I can't remember. It was due north, which was the whole delivery back. It's like, oh my God. And it was January, and yeah, it's fun times.
But it didn't turn you away.
It didn't. No, it was all experiences, and that's how I started with deliveries and sailing different boats and all of that.
At what point did you get back into the racing? Where I know you've told me stories of you doing class mini stuff, and you aspired to do the Vendée Globe and all that, and you did that for a while. How did that start? So
I went back to training for Clipper and everything, and I reached the point where for 2 years I did exactly the same, and I got a bit not bored, but
what do you mean exactly the same?
So I became a training skipper for Clipper.
Okay.
And I didn't have any ambitions to do the race as a skipper.
To be a race skipper. So can you describe the difference? What's the difference between a training skipper and a race skipper?
So training skipper are the skippers who basically train the crew to become race crew on the race. While the race skippers, they don't do much of the training side of it. They do the whole 11 months of the race as skippers. And so I really enjoyed the training side of it, of training the crews to be ready for the race.
And you're basically just sailing out of Portsmouth, or Gosport, actually, where Falcon was built. Bringing this full circle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was a bit like, when I became a training skipper, I was like, what's next? Because I don't want to do the race. And I don't want to also do this for the rest of my life.
Do
So
most training skippers aspire to like be racing skippers? Is that kind of the path?
not all of them, but I think you see straight away when people join the training, as staff join the training, you see straight away if they want to do the race or not.
Yeah.
But not generally. Like many training skippers have no interest in doing the race.
And to talk about the small world that we have here now, that's when you met Nikki, right?
Yes,
Nikki Henderson, who also works for us, runs our racing program with you.
exactly. So Nikki's boat for the Round the World was the boat I raced around the world.
The boat she was skippering was a boat you sailed.
CV26. That was our boat and her boat. So when Nikki got appointed the boat, Clipper had a thing where first mates would help some skippers. So I applied to be a first mate for the prep week, and I got appointed to Nikki's boat, and that's when we became quite good friends. And through that, yeah.
And now here, what year was that?
That was 2016, 17.
17. Now here you are, 7 years later, and you guys just got finished running the Carib 600 together.
Yeah,
How does that feel?
Oh man, amazing! What a trip. Yeah, I think Nikki wants to do a whole podcast about it, so I won't give you that much pleasure.
No, that's partly why I wanted to interview you first, so that people get to know you, and then when Nikki talks to you about the race, they'll be able to put all this together.
That's good. But yeah, that race was amazing. And it's so good. It's the first time Nikki and I have raced together, which was...
Really?
Yeah, raced, yeah. It's not the first
I
time
knew
we
you sailed
together.
a bunch together, but I didn't know you really never raced together.
Never.
Oh,
so it was
cool.
so much fun, like seeing each other's like competitive side come out and how we gelled together, which, we're a good team when we race together.
So back to your solo racing. So you said the Clipper training, you were just sort of like, you didn't want to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah, so I hit this basically spot where I was like, okay, I need to do something else. And racing, I joined the sailing industry because I wanted to race. It was like my passion was racing, and I haven't done much of it. I have been stuck on training, which I loved, but I was like, I want to try and get somehow there. But I mean, for all the sailors out there, you know how the feeling of like, if you want to be a racing paid crew member, the only way to get there is basically contacts. It's
networking.
It's networking. Like if you go to people you will never get paid to race. That's for sure. So I was like, I needed a way to make contacts, and it was my parents. I think it was my dad that said, well, why don't you take up that idea of the mini transat? And I had looked at the mini transat boats I followed the race every year, and I thought like, what a bunch of lunatics crossing the Atlantic in like a 21-foot boat. Like, you are just nuts. And
so 21-foot boat, which are basically like mini versions of like an open 60, like the Vendée Globe.
Exactly
guys.
that. Yeah, square top, like
super high powered.
They can average 13 knots on the right course.
13.
13.
Average
1-3
for 20-foot boat.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So I was like, you know when something is always in your head, but it's like, that's too good for me. Like, I'm not that good. And I was at one point where I had confidence because I was skippering 70-foot boats and everything. I was like, I'm going to give this a go. So I started looking for minis. I mean, the search for a mini took over a year to find the right boat. And I finally found her, Skiron. And yeah, I went for it. I put the deposit in, and it was a lease. So I paid monthly because I couldn't afford to buy the whole thing at once.
How much would it cost to buy a mini?
So Skiron was 80,000. Okay. The brand new ones now, they're at like 120,000.
Wow.
This is pounds.
Yeah.
So it's just they're becoming too expensive. But yeah, I got her and I did the class mini circuit for 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many miles did you race solo?
It's now over 7,000 miles solo.
As I understand it, though, from the story, as we come back to like how you got involved with us, at some point, at least as I understand it, you seem to have lost that spark.
Yes, I did. So I had the project to do the 2021 Mini Transat, and I qualified for it. So I was qualified and all of that. But
what does it take to qualify?
It takes, so you have to do a 1,000 mile qualifying passage on your own. And then you have to compete in 1,500 miles on class mini racing events with your boat. It doesn't count if you do it on other boats.
Okay.
So I managed to qualify. And the problem with qualifying, well, it's quite important because there's such a big waiting list of people wanting to do it. So it was a big deal. But then it was through the whole lot with COVID and everything, and the sponsor that I had pulled out. So I ended up with a big invoice for the race and the cargo ship back and everything that I couldn't afford. So a decision was made that because I was so stressed out that I was like, this is not the point of it. This shouldn't be stressful. I'm going to delay it. So I decided to delay it to 2023. And during those 2 years, I got other opportunities. I met you guys as well during that time. And I kind of, my focus changed a bit. And I didn't want to do it anymore. And it's funny, like my dad keeps asking me, do you regret the decision? And there is not one day that I regret it, because that boat gave me so much and it taught me so much. And one of the things that taught me is I don't want to be alone on a boat.
Why?
Because I really, really struggled. So as we all know, there's highs and lows on the boat. And through the lows, I was absolutely fine. I can deal with the lows on my own. But it was the highs. I really struggle not to be able to share the highs. And every time you go to land and you try and explain those highs, it's never the same.
People, yeah, sure. We talk about this on our trips, that you almost need to have like a support group because people at home can never understand.
Yes, so it was exactly that. And the highs I had is some of the best highs in my life that I'll never be able to share with anyone. And it made me really sad. So I really struggled on that side.
Do you have an example of one of those highs?
God, I remember when I was doing my qualifying passage, and I remember my battery. So all the way to charge the batteries on the minis is mainly through solar panel.
Do they have engines?
No, God, no engines.
Okay.
And we have little outboards, but they take them away for racing.
Okay.
You're not allowed to carry the outboard. So the only way to charge the batteries was either through solar or I had a tiny methanol generator.
Wait, a methanol generator?
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's great. It's like it's a bio generator.
Wow.
It's great. It's absolutely great. But anyway, my generator wasn't working, and I had to send it to Germany for like repair or whatever. One of these services that they can only do in the factory.
Yeah.
So I was only relying on my solar, and God, the batteries were just going down and down and down and down every day. I remember sending through Yellow Brick to my parents, be like, I'm going to lose comms at any point, guys. I guess I'll see you in 3 days, hopefully. And I managed to fix it. So I managed to track the wire and everything. I wasn't great at maintenance, but I was so, like, when I found the wire had split in the joint between the outside and the hull, where it goes through the hull, and I found it, and I was like, oh my God, and I managed to rewire it. And I was so happy. And the battery suddenly be at like 5% to like, whoa, start building up again to 20, 30, 40. I was like, oh my God. And that high, I explained it to everyone and they're like, oh, that's cool. And it's just
dude,
like...
Well, I can relate to that because I had a very similar experience on our transatlantic. The Watton Sea wasn't working, which was broken on your guys' trip. And same thing. It was a wiring issue. I traced it. I found it. And I actually wrote my column for Sail Magazine about the joys of successfully troubleshooting something.
Oh, my. It was so great.
It's the best. I know exactly how you feel. But I also understand how no one else cares.
Nobody else cared. Yeah. And there were so many, especially on the racing and everything, that it was highs. You know, some highs are so little but so big at that point that then when you share them in land, they stay little.
Yeah. So I'll just briefly tell the story of how, from our perspective, when you got involved with 59 North, it was Mia's first trip back since having Axel. So Axel was born in 2020. This was 2022, right?
I think so.
Yeah, 2022 transatlantic. Mia was on the boat from Las Palmas to Cape Verde and then Cape Verde to Barbados. The same route we just did this year on Falcon. It was 2022 because it was 2 years ago. She'd flown out to Las Palmas. I'm now home with Axel, supposed to be home with Axel for 6 weeks. Like the day after she left, Axel got a fever. And like it lasted for a couple days. And you know, kids get sick. He was 2 at the time. And I was like, no big deal. And then it just didn't go away. Finally, me and Mia's mom took him to the hospital, to like the emergency room, the kids' emergency room. And on the way in my arms, he had a seizure.
Jesus.
Which kids, it's not that uncommon when you have a really high fever for a long time, you can have a fever seizure. It was the scariest moment of my life. It was so sad because he like looked me in the eyes like right before it happened, and he was like, you could like see the fear because he didn't know what was happening. Oh my God, it was horrible. So thankfully we were just walking into the hospital that this happened. So I call Mia and she's like, all right, they resolved it in the moment, and then we spent the night in the hospital. And then, to make a long story short, there was a few other things, like he had a complicated start when he was born, and there was a couple other scary things that came up in his blood test. So we kind of were like, all right, here we go again. Let's see what happens. And Mia's like, it's like the day before her and Nikki are supposed to go offshore, and Mia's like, I gotta go home because if this goes bad, I'm gonna be stuck on the boat.
Yeah.
So Mia flies home. Now Nikki's on the boat, and now I'll pass it over to you. So then what do you get a call from Nikki?
Well, so this is so funny because I just literally finished the World Transatlantic race on a fully pro boat. And
what boat?
It was Phosphorus,
Which is a
it's a prototype 40-footer,
Okay.
just a one-off.
fully pro. You were paid to race.
Yes.
Yep.
What
What you thought you wanted to do, right?
what I thought I wanted to do, and I remember coming home and talking to Beth, my partner, and being like, I want to stop sailing. Like, this is not what I want to do. Like, I am lost. I don't know what I want. I didn't enjoy my time there, which is what I had fought for my whole life to do, and I found out to be not enjoying it. Which was a
What
shame.
didn't you like about it?
It was the people. I really didn't enjoy the passage with the people, and for like the more I sail, the more I realize how important the people are. Like, I always thought it was all about having the best boat, racing the quickest, and now the more I sail is actually going the slowest and enjoying the most with the people around you is the most important thing. And yeah, it was a big eye opener, but it's what I was doing at that point, and I was like, I don't want to do this, and I was a bit not on a dark space, but a bit like contemplating my options.
What are you going to do with your career now that you thought you wanted this and now you don't?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And anyway, at that point, I've been at home one day and I get a call from Nikki and she starts talking to me about you guys, 59 North. And she's like, would you be interested in sailing with them? I was like, oh yeah, they sound cool. Like, that would be like a good, different kind of what I've been doing lately and all of that. And she's like, oh, cool. Well, I can offer you a trip. I was like, oh, that's awesome. When? And she's like, tomorrow. I remember I was like, oh my God, Nikki, really? Tomorrow? And it was actually Beth, my partner. She was like, you need to do this, because I was in a bad place at home, and she was like, I don't want you like this here. Go there, sort your head.
Get the hell out of the house.
Sort your head, and then come back and see how you feel. Plus, they look cool, so who knows? Like, maybe we'll give you more opportunities in the future. And I was like, okay, that's a fair point. So I'll do it. Plus, we'll be sailing with Nikki, which is sailing with a friend, which was fun. So I was like, okay, let's do it.
This was on Ice Bear. This is before we had Falcon.
Yeah. So I joined Ice Bear. I literally put my bags on the boat as they were ready to slip the lines. So I put my bags on board and we slipped the lines off to Cape Verde straight away.
Wow.
And it was great. I had so much fun that trip. I kept telling Nikki, I was like, you are bringing me back the passion for sailing, big time, on like steroids straight away. And yeah, we had a blast that trip. Met beautiful people, had the best time. We're swimming in the middle of the ocean. We had beautiful sailing. It was all perfect. And yeah, that high, I still carry it. And I'm still with you guys since then.
Well, I mean, I was going to ask, I don't remember. It's easy to remember the first trip. Oh, by the way, Axel did get better, and it was a false alarm while we were stuck in the hospital. Mia comes back. So Axel had COVID. That's what gave him the high fever. I also had got COVID, obviously. So we're in the hospital. Now Mia comes home. Now all three of us are in the hospital together, in quarantine in this room. We weren't allowed to leave with COVID. Mia's like, there's no way I don't get COVID here.
Yeah.
But she wanted to go back out to do the transatlantic. So we get home from the hospital, and you guys are at sea, and you guys get to Cape Verde, and Mia's like, she was testing herself every day. She'd booked a ticket to go back, testing every day, negative, negative, negative. Got on the plane, negative. Gets off the plane, positive. So then she had to quarantine for 5 days in an Airbnb in Mindelo, which I didn't quite realize until I got to Mindelo myself this year what that must have been like.
Yes, well, and it was so funny. That's how I met Mia for the first time, through the window.
Through the window. So anyway, she gets back on the boat. Axel and I stay home. She does the transatlantic, and all kind of goes back to normal. Her and Nikki do the transatlantic. Ironically enough, the 6 people that were on that crew on Ice Bear, all 6 of them signed up for the same passage to cross the Pacific on Falcon. So Nikki and Mia are like maybe going to hijack that trip because it's this get the gang back together. But I don't remember the second trip you ever did for us.
That was with Chris. So that was from Azores to Bergen. So it's quite a big trip. The one that we sailed the first half the wrong way to get through the weather system.
Right. Okay. And then from there, it was just like, because Chris was also a mutual friend of you and Nikki's,
yes.
And like this small world. All you guys at some point had done something for Clipper, and then Chris went on to work and still does for Skip Novak, whatever.
Yeah, I was kind of like that as a relief mate because someone had pulled out or something. So again, like replacement.
Yeah.
Because we hadn't met yet. We had barely talked.
That's right. Yeah.
And it was after that trip then came the whole Falcon thing. So I came whilst Falcon was in the yard, met Adam. and then I met you for the sea trials.
At what point did you like? Did you say like, oh man, like I want to do as much as I can with you guys? Like when did you and how did that like carry over from that first trip?
That was since the beginning. Like
Yeah.
I thought, like the way that you guys cared for your staff, it's something I never experienced before. And I worked for a few different companies and never experienced it before. And it was like, for the first time, it felt like sailing with family.
Yeah.
And I didn't even meet you guys yet. It's like, so the more I sail with you, the more I realize it's like I want to give my best to these people because it's people who care about you, and that's so invaluable. It's you can't put a value to it. And still now, the more I'm here and the more I do, the more I want to keep going and get more involved. It's I don't know if that makes any sense.
And now you're literally shanghaied into sailing with me and my friends for a few days here in Antigua.
Yeah, which I'm on a secret mission to report to Mia.
But but that's the thing. I mean, like, there's nothing. I don't think we do anything besides I'm not the, well, you call me boss, which I hate, but like I'm not at home sitting there direct. I'm actually here too. Like I want to have fun. All we're trying to do is create a business where we can have fun doing what we love.
Yeah,
that's it. That's all. It's as simple as that. And I think like that all this stuff carries over.
Yeah, but it's also the way that you treat people, and I think you can be. I think many companies out there like they don't care, and like if you don't come back tomorrow, they won't care, and like they won't even ask you if ways to improve the boat or ways to improve the company or how can it's like. Yeah, they
so
don't care.
Funny, like small stuff too, because Mano was so impressed. We put that spray nozzle on the galley sink because he used to work in restaurants, and he comes on the boat last year, and we always do a debrief at the end of the debrief. It's like, what improvements do you want to make to the boat? And Mano's like, we need a spray nozzle on that, and then it actually happened. He's like, I've never seen that before. It actually, you guys actually did it. And now we're going to make a second modification to that to make it even better still. And he's just like, I can't believe it. You actually did it. It's like, yeah, it's freaking great. It's cool.
Yeah, because you guys listen, and that is awesome. And it's not as common as you think it should be.
Well, I guess not. But I think it's just down to the fact that we're also sailing. We also just want to have fun with fun people, and we're not running this. I mean, yes, it has to. We were talking about this last night on Anchor here in Antigua that, like, yes, I'm really proud of this because we are not. You know, we have some investors and we have loans and stuff. Like, we've got a lot of people on our side, but the business has to make money for all this to work. We have to, it has to sustain itself. We're not a pro racing team that's financed by somebody that's doing it for fun. We're not a super yacht. You know, it's rare that we have jobs in sailing that are actually because there is a supply and demand that can actually pay for us. Now, we're not making very much money, but that's not the point. No,
and you guys are, doing exactly what you say, which is giving us the chance to make a living out of all of this.
So I always say there's like this neat symbiosis between the customers that come on these trips. They're fulfilling like a bucket list dream of theirs, and in turn, they get to allow us to have this dream career.
Yep.
And it's got to be the last thing. I mean, we're believe it or not, we're at an hour already.
What?
Told you this would go fast.
I didn't know I had that much to talk about.
Well, so you and I and Chris, a lot of people are in this August. We all have or are about to have families and stuff. So is it hard for you? I mean, you've been away now for a while. I'm going to have been away for 6 weeks. How does that work in your life? Like, you're about to be a dad.
Yep.
Is that? Am I allowed to talk about that?
It's too late anyway. No, absolutely. Yeah, so obviously you guys know it's hard, but it's also who you've got on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could not have done any of this without Beth and her support to me. And she knows this is the lifestyle I want, and she knew that the first day that we met.
Yeah.
And so she always says to me when I apologize when I leave, she always says to me, she's like, I know what I signed up for. Like, don't worry about it.
That's so cool.
And it's super cool. But yeah, she's now that we're having a baby, she's more like, I'm like, oh God, I miss to be home. And she's like, oh, get on with it.
Well, I banned you from being on the boat within 2 months of the due date because of what happened with us and Axel, because he was born 2 months early and I was in Colorado. So you now, to bring this full circle, you work full time for us.
Yep.
And what we do is we say, okay, you got to give us 6 weeks at a time, but we won't ask for more than that. And I put me as the same thing. We take turns. And I think that works really well. And I actually think it'll be interesting to see how it works for you. But for us, I think we have a better family relationship because of it. Because you get some time to be yourself. completely on your own.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I talked with Chris about it because Chris obviously has Alexander, and it's when you put it into paper, actually, you spend more time. It's more quality time spent with them because once you're home, you're fully home.
Yep.
You're not like working in between and arriving home tired. And you're fully home with all your attention to them, which I think is invaluable as well. Like, I never had that as a kid.
And you're going to be, so to make up for you're not doing some sailing this summer, you're going to be the mission control and shore support for us and stuff while we're out sailing.
Yeah, I'm already thinking about riddles and everything to send to the boat every day.
Awesome. Well, man, it's been really fun getting to know you. I love the backstory. I mean, it's really cool. I knew some of these stories we talked about, but not all of them. And I mean, we could go on for another hour, but we're gonna go look at some boats this afternoon in Antigua. So
sounds like a plan.
Let's do it. But really, I'm so happy to have you on the team. I love all this, and I think it's very inspiring. I think it's really cool that you kind of the career path you had. I think is not common, but it's like, yeah, okay, 40 or 50 or whatever it costs now to do Clipper. Well, that's like 1 or 2 years of university tuition if you're an American.
Yep.
And if you like, I think it's a viable career path to do stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Or even better yet, pay to come with us. You never know where it's going to go. A couple $1,000 to do an ocean crossing. Well, if you that's an investment if you're trying to get experience.
And you get the community, you get to know the community and the context, and that's exactly how I got in. It's as simple and as different as that.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thank you. This has been great.
All right, man.
Thanks again to the Harbor Burn Cannon Company for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. If you've got a boat, you need a cannon. If you need a cannon, go to harborburn.com to pick out yours now. Thanks also to Forbes Yachts for sponsoring this show. Go to Forbes Yachts, that's Forbes, ForbesYachts.com to get in touch to buy or sell your dream boat. And tell Forbes that Andy from 59 North said hello. On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 Degrees North and hosted by me, Andy Schell, and also by August Sandberg, Emma Garshagen, and occasionally Ben Doer. The show is mixed and produced in Frederick, Maryland by Lee Cumberland. Ads are read by us, the hosts, and occasionally by 59 North's bosun Adam Brown and podcast producer Lee Cumberland. Episode artwork and website show notes are done by Laura Parent in San Francisco. The intro theme music is composed and performed by former podcast guest and musician Cameron Dale, while the outro music you're hearing now is, of course, by our friends, the Storm Weather Shanty Choir. We love hearing from our fans, so send your questions and comments to holdfast@59-north.com, and please do us a favor and review the show on iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts. Until next time, hold fast.
I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time. But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone. Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. It was when I awoke, it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone. As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said,
last time you was paid up with me, you took up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more.
once more, to go to sea once more. I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. With a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any whores. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.